Okay, so there's been a new story coming out that is Google is going to start to rank sites based on their truth. Here's a quote here. Anti-science advocates are freaking out about Google truth rankings. Addicting info. Fox News officially freaking out about Google's plans to rank sites by accuracy. Google wants to rank websites based on facts, not links. Facts. So Google is going to decide what the facts are and is going to rank the websites based on facts, based on Google truth. Google is going to figure out what the truth is, and that's going to be. And if you're opposed to this, if you're opposed to a search engine company, you know, slanting the website rankings based on what they decide is the truth. If you're opposed to that, well, then you're anti-science. You're anti-science. I mean, the people who don't have a problem with this or aren't concerned about the moral hazard of this, they're just naive about what science is. Okay, and so Google should not be doing this. Period. Right? This is not and moreover, I'll talk about what I want to talk about in like maybe a minute here. But for now, let me just put it this way. So with this global warming thing, you have most of the news media on board with the anthropogenic global warming thing, right? Most of the news. There's Fox News, all right. There's Fox News that's generally critical of it, but the rest of the media, right? Most of the media, right, which is bigger than Fox News in aggregate, if not each individual network is. In aggregate, it's bigger. They're pushing AGW. Okay, right. This is not climate denial talking points. This is I believe my general analysis of that. I haven't done a statistical analysis of this, but I think my general gestalt of the situation is above board. Okay. The universities overwhelmingly are in the tank for AGW. Again, I don't think this is a controversial thing to say. Okay, so they got most of the news media. They got the universities. They got Wikipedia. Okay, and what I think is happening is Google is going. The people at Google, they have their beliefs, they have their agenda, and they're thinking, okay, so we have control of all these other things, but the search engine, what's up with that is constantly at the top, and he's telling lies. He's not telling the truth of the matter, right? And what I think is happening, you could the AGW people, you control all this stuff and you still can't win. That's what's happening. And basically what I think these people are doing, it's like they're pro free speech so long as they get to win all the time. And as soon as they start losing, then it's time to curtail free speech. They don't get it. Free speech means you lose. You lose from time to time. That's what it means. It means sometimes, even if you got the university, even if you got the Wikipedia, if you got the majority of the news media, from time to time, you still lose both on policy and public opinion. All right? That's what it means. It means you lose from time to time. And what Google is doing is they're basically a bunch of people who think that they're entitled to win every fight all the time. And it's just insipid and asinine, and it's dishonest. And I want to get into something else here, which is, Google's going to rank their sites based on truth, based on what they think is the true facts. True facts, man. Okay, and what a lot of people do when they talk about global warming, that's what this is about. It's about global warming, right? They'll say, well, on this side, you got 97% of the people who do research on climate, quote unquote, and they all say IPCC consensus on AGW, right? Now everyone believes CO2 is a greenhouse gas, but but what are they? What's the 97 consensus about? Who knows? But we'll just say, for the sake of argument, that it's on the IPCC consensus. That's what 97%. All right, over there. Now over here, we have 3%, a little less than 3%, plus a few hacks like Anthony Watts. That hack, Anthony Watts. Right. So sometimes the news media will try to present it like two sides, but it's not really two sides. One side is the real scientists who actually know what's going on. The other side is just a few hacks, and they're funded by the oil industry and all this stuff. It's like, well, okay, that's one way to look at it. Now, first off, that's incorrect. If you actually look at surveys of climate scientists who regularly publish in journals, it's only about 79%. Okay? The 97% number, that comes from people doing like published article audits. Basically, they read a bunch of articles, not the articles, the abstracts, and then they code them, is this with the IPCC consensus or is this against it? And basically you had the Cook guy at Skeptical Science did one of these and found 97% or like, and this is a robust finding because but I don't know why would you do that? Why would you use that method of people going in, reading abstracts and then coding that as to whether or not they agree with the IPCC consensus? Why would you ever do that when you can just go ask the people? And when you ask the people, the number you get is not 97%, it's 79%. You flip them around. So anyway, but the consensus is 79 to 21, not 97 to 3. Okay. But that would be, like, if you're looking at it in terms of, like, percentages, that would be the accurate percentage, 79 to 21, not 97 to 3. But even if you, and so that's one way to look at it. But another way to look at it is that here's a bunch of people who can predict temperatures, here's a bunch of people who can't. And that's something that is so shocking to me when I started looking into this topic, is how nobody, like, predictions, fucking predictions, it's like they're doing science, but they forgot what science is. Like, if what you're saying doesn't fucking predict, then there's no reason to believe that you're an expert at anything. Okay? There's this guy, J. Scott Armstrong, who does, I forget exactly what he does, but he does something very simple, right? Just looks at past trends and kind of extrapolates it forward, makes the assumption of no change in trend, and he predicts better than, he predicts better than the IPCC, but that may not be that tall of an order. Okay, if you just predict 0, you'll predict better than the IPCC because the actual numbers are closer to 0 than the IPCC's quote-unquote best estimate from 2007. But so what? How about Google does that? I mean, first, Google should not be in the business of deciding truth. Or if they want to do something like that, maybe have another search engine option where you have Google Truth. I think such an idea is just ridiculous. But okay, Google Truth. Well, why don't you know what I'm thinking about this? I'm thinking about it like a high school football team. Like in a high school football team, you have freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And in general, yeah, your seniors are gonna be the best players as a class because they're 18-year-olds as opposed to 14-year-olds. So they're going to be your best players on average, okay? So if you just had to make up, who do you want to make your best team? And you have to pick a bunch of players, but you can't see them, you can't look at them. The only thing you know about them is whether or not they're freshmen, sophomore, juniors, or seniors. What class? What's going to be your start? Well, you're going to pick all seniors, right? Even though it's very unlikely that the best 11 players are all going to be seniors, that you're going to get that's the best group to cut it off from, right? So yeah, okay, so that's fine, right? But there's no reason to just plug someone in just because he's a senior, and seniors tend to be better. No, you go by people, you pick people based on how well they play, right? And if you want to talk about, global warming, okay, perhaps people who have degrees in climatology are going to make better predictions than people who don't. Maybe, right? Maybe you want to assume that. Maybe you want to believe that. Okay, that's fine. That's something. Maybe with all this degree stuff and all this knowledge and all these computers, maybe that will translate into more accurate predictions. Maybe it will. But you don't just say, all right, well, I'm just going to take whatever they say because they got all this stuff. You you have to actually see the performance, and and it's just shocking to me how there seems to be it seems to be like specific to global warming, right, or climate science. But that's basically when the public's talking about climate science, they're talking about global warming. So it seems specific to global warming that nobody cares about predictions, right? Like science, everything else is all about predictions. Like if you have a doctor saying, well, I can't actually cure any diseases or anything, but that's not, what being a doctor is about. Being a doctor is about knowing a lot of Latin words, having spent a lot of time in school, and knowing how to use this really specialized equipment. It's not about actually treating disease. It's about being a doctor. All right. And so you have all these climate experts who apparently they're too busy being experts, writing peer-reviewed papers and working with supercomputers. They're too busy doing this stuff to actually do what is supposedly their job, which is to predict global temperature anomalies, right? And so you end up having people who make like stupid, SPR simple rules, like statistical prediction rule models based on like, well, let's just go with direct forcing of CO2. Oh, look, that beats fucking everyone. And it's just a joke, right? And so if Google wants to rank pages on the basis of truth, okay, well, how about how about the truth in terms of who can predict? Because you want to say that these people are experts. Well, how about some evidence of their expertise? How about some fucking evidence that these people are in fact experts, not just Noam Chomsky coming up on his thing saying, 98% of people who know anything about climate say this. Blah, 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 blah. I'm Noam Chomsky. All right. How about some actual freaking predictive validity or ability? And there's so many of these people saying, oh, well, see, the problem is the climate deniers. They're funded by big oil. Okay, how does that compare to all of the funding, like basically every university in the United States, for example, okay, completely in the tank? How about the funding, government funding into climate research? How about that for conflict of interest, right? But the thing is that, that's not even counted. That's not even seen as like what is that not funding? Or let's put another thing. Let's talk about like, for example, Michael Mann or that Cook guy or I forget what his name is. I forget these guys. Like the 6 guys at East Anglia or whatever, right? Let's say that it turns out that this whole global warming thing, it was all a big scientific chit, right? It was all a big fad, a big institutional meme that was wrong from the ground up. I know, impossible, never happened before, but just suspend disbelief for the moment and just imagine that this could possibly be the case. All right, all right, just imagine that. Okay, what's going to happen to these people who've built their entire careers on global warming? Whose claim to fame is that I was one of the leading authors on the 1990, the 1990 something, the 2001, and the 2007, and I think now it's the 2014 IPCC reports. I forget the specific years. They don't do it in a regular interval, so I forget the specific years they do them in. Right? That's your claim to fame. Right? Or frickin' Al Gore, his claim to fame is the inconvenient truth in promoting global warming to the public. Right? What if it all ended up being a crock? What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to their legacy? What's going to happen to what's going to happen to their reputation? What are they going to be known as? Right? Oh, they're going to be known as that, the people who push that global warming fad. What idiots. Right? Their whole imprimatur is going to be completely blown away. So, how about that? How about that conflict of interest? Right? So people go on about conflict of interest. What about your conflict of interest? What about these people who, right? But of course, no. Conflict of interest is only on one side, right? Oh, Richard Lindzen, he got some money from some oil, right? Which is like a half-truth. But okay, so Richard Lindzen got some money from some oil to do some consulting, whatever. Oh, see, he's in the tank for big oil. Okay. But one thing to keep in mind is that when Richard Lindzen was at MIT before he got railroaded out, most of his paycheck was still coming from MIT, right? So if you want to talk about conflict of interest, like Richard Lindzen was being paid primarily, most of his funding was coming from MIT, not from oil. Even though he was getting some money from oil, most of his money was coming from MIT, which on the whole is, warmist, right? Is part of the consensus science on the topic. Right. So I mean, the stuff about conflict of it's just, it's like they're not even aware. It's like they haven't even thought about it. It's like conflict of interest only occurs on one side for people who are getting money from industry. If they're getting money from the universities or they're getting money from government, right? That money doesn't cause bias, right? These people who have built their, rickety little fringe careers being global warming deniers, that's bias. Whereas people who have built their entire persona on global warming, as in Al Gore, or their entire academic career, like working for the IPCC, like Michael Mann, no conflict of interest there. Right? How can you even think that way? How can people even? How does that even reach square one? Right? But of course, it's that same non-thought on the matter that causes them to not even consider, hey, I wonder who actually makes predictions. Maybe one way to actually look into the matter, instead of going with, what somebody is telling us what the consensus is, we can actually, that's how you look at other things. Like, for example, if you take any other hard science, right? If you think global warming is a hard science, take any of the hard science, well, how do you figure out who's right and who's wrong? Well, who can make accurate predictions? But that shit just flies out the window with global warming. Right? Any other topic, like the general public will immediately go, okay, who can predict? Who can predict? Who can't? But with global warming, it's not. Anyway, I'm looping on this matter. Right, what really inspired me to make this video was the Google thing. Right, they're saying, well, we want to give page rank bonuses to people who say true facts. Right, which is going to be hilarious because it's like, okay, so you're going to give page rank bonuses to people who predicted, 12 more degrees in global temperature, right, as for their upper bound estimates, right, and like 5 degrees for their best fit estimate and 3 degrees for their lower bound estimate. I mean, you're talking about ridiculously wrong predictions for how the temperature was going to change, right? Right, if you want to say Lord Monckton's a clown because he gets X, Y, or Z wrong, okay, well, you can argue about specific points until you're blue in the face, but one really simple thing to do that I think will give you a good idea as to who's closer to the truth than someone else is, what were their predictions? Not fucking retrodictions. Anybody can retrodict, okay? This is something that is key in forecasting. Like a bunch of people will create a model and say, "Oh, my model retrodicts very well. That means it's going to predict very well." It doesn't. It fucking doesn't. Right? Retrodiction has very little. This is just true facts. This is just like empirically verified. Your ability to retrodict does not help that much in terms of how well you can predict, right? And so yeah, but just do that. Just do that. I mean, that seems like a very simple way to figure out, or at least have a kind of a general idea of who's closer to the truth, and it's going to be who can predict and who can't. It seems shockingly obvious to me, and I haven't heard any real arguments against it, except for some morons who will say, well, science shouldn't really be about prediction. It should be about the stuff that I found in my butt, right? So just do that. And if Google would just do that, right, rank sites on the basis of who makes correct predictions. Now, of course, if you do that, you can figure out, well, what data set are we going to use to compare the predictions to? And there's one data set that I think everyone could agree on, and that would be satellites, UAH and RSS satellites, and the radiosondes. Just use those, okay? Because those are the only, real functionally global data sets. Not ground stations, right? Because again, they have differing standards for different countries, especially if you're doing historical data. You have to correct for everything. Radiosondes, yeah, you have to correct. I mean, it's not uniform for the radiosondes either, that's true, but it's not as bad as the issues on land, right? So it's better. Okay, so just use radiosondes and satellites, right? That's the temperature record that we're going to compare the predictions to, right? And then just look at the predictions, track the predictions, use some sort of prediction tracker, right? If you want to say, oh, well, Lord Monckton, he's not a real scientist and his bulging eyeballs or whatever, right? Well, let's compare his predictions to the experts and see who's the real expert, okay? And because like you can argue about like specific things, all the little topics about the global warming issue until you're blue in the face. But you can just go straight for the jugular of the issue, just cut to the chase really quickly by just saying, what are the predictions? And if Google wants to rate people by true facts, well, what about the truth in the predictions? Okay, what about the truth in in what science really is, and that is the ability to actually do things that have some sort of empirical effect.